The White House is on the defense after a federal judge denied the Trump administration's request to block the release of former National Security Advisor John Bolton's memoir. With the White House failing to stop the memoir's release, Bolton is launching a book tour. In an interview, Bolton made accusations against the president of illegal behavior and putting national security at risk. The tour comes ahead of the release of his new memoir, The Room Where It Happened, which is being published by Simon Schuster. That is a division of ViacomCBS. As Weijia Jiang reports from the White House, Bolton explained why he will not be voting for the president he once worked for.
We can get over one term. 2 terms I'm more troubled about.
John Bolton claims he's speaking out now, in part to prevent President Trump from winning another term.
I hope it will remember him as a one-term president who didn't plunge the country irretrievably into a downward spiral we can't recall from.
But lawmakers from both sides are slamming the former national security advisor who refused to participate in the House impeachment case.
If John Bolton had really wanted to get this information out for reasons other than his own personal profit, he should have come and testify before the House or the Senate.
Bolton said the president did link military aid to investigations into his political opponent, the issue at the heart of the impeachment inquiry.
In his mind, he was bargaining to get the investigation using the resources of the federal government, which I found very disturbing.
But he argues his testimony would not have made a difference. Bolton is bringing attention to what he says is the driving force behind Mr. Trump's decisions, re-election.
A lot of people have complained that he has a short attention span and he doesn't focus. I want to say when it comes to re-election, his attention span was infinite. It's just too bad there wasn't more of that when it came to national security.
We begin our campaign.
Over the weekend, President Trump relaunched his campaign in Tulsa. And as health officials warn about the spreading virus, the president said he directed officials to slow down one of the key tools to controlling it.
When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people, you're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
A White House official tells CBS News Mr. Trump was clearly speaking in jest.
We've never had an empty seat, and we certainly won't in Oklahoma.
Last week, President Trump and the campaign boasted about the expected rally size, insisting that 1 million tickets had been requested. But on Saturday, the president looked out into a sea of blue, empty seats. Just over 6,000 people showed up.
Let's bring in Meridith McGraw now. She's a White House reporter for Politico. Welcome, Meridith. Great to have you with us. I want to talk about Bolton in a moment, but first I want to discuss President Trump's rally in Tulsa this weekend, which didn't live up to the campaign's expectations in terms of numbers. Big rallies were a key fixture of the president's 2016 campaign. Do we know if his campaign is looking into reformatting these events in terms of capacity?
Well, being out on the campaign trail is something that the president relishes, and he enjoys being out in front of a large crowd, speaking to his fans, and being able to talk about really whatever he wants. But of course, this weekend, the Tulsa rally fell far short of expectations. The campaign manager, Brad Parscale, had bragged about a record number of people signing up for tickets, and the president himself had boasted that they expected thousands and thousands to show up. And while the arena there in Tulsa has a very sizable capacity, you could see there in the photos that you're showing, it wasn't at capacity, and they even had to close down that outside area where they hoped that Vice President Pence and Trump could address an overflow crowd. And, you know, there were a lot of red flags going into this rally. 6 campaign staffers had tested positive for the virus. The campaign had to put in a lot of preventative measures, temperature checks. They passed out masks, things like that for rally goers. And ultimately, And it wasn't just, fears of the virus, but the campaign claimed that protesters blocked people from coming in. So there was sort of a slew of mishaps, the campaign claims, that led to this smaller turnout. And, the president has not been happy about what happened. And campaign advisors are certainly going to have to rethink things moving forward so that they don't find this sort of embarrassing moment again.
And Meridith, the president is set to hit the road again tomorrow. What can you tell us about his visit to Arizona?
Well, President Trump has another opportunity to address some of his biggest fans tomorrow at Turning Point's summit in Arizona. This is a group of young conservatives. It's led by Charlie Kirk, and it's all President Trump's biggest youth allies, but he's also going to be making a visit to the border wall, where he's expected to check things out and mark the 200th mile of his border wall being completed. Although I will say the president promised that he would complete 450 miles before the November election, and obviously that 200-mile goal comes far short. But building a wall is something that he likes to tout when he's out on the campaign trail. We're certainly in re-election mode right now, and he's hoping to push that message while he's there.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about John Bolton now. The president tweeted about him this morning. There have been several books written about and by former members of the Trump administration. Of all of those books, would you say that this one is getting the most reaction from the president and his administration? And if so, why?
We've seen a slew of tell-all books over the course of this presidency, from Cliff Sims' tell-all. He was an aide in the White House to, of course, Omarosa Manigault Newman, who was a contestant on The Apprentice, who then joined Trump's White House. Neither of them got rave reviews for their books from the president, but we really haven't seen this kind of reaction from the White House from one of these tell-all memoirs. And that's mainly because Bolton was certainly there for a long period of time, but also he had the kind of access to certainly classified events. He had access to some of these really big controversial moments during Trump's presidency, whether it was the summit with Kim Jong-un or his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, and that summit, and of course that infamous press conference there. So as his title purports, he claims to be in the room where it happened, and that has a lot of Trump's advisors and of course the president himself upset about some of the claims and anecdotes that are in the book that don't paint a very favorable depiction of the president and his decision-making skills and some of the things that happened behind the scenes. And lately, we're really seeing a, all-out defense coming from the president and from his allies. And most recently this morning, former press secretary Sarah Sanders, who is also coming out with her own tell-all book soon.
Very, very interesting. All right, so I want to move on now to Attorney General Barr, who is under fire once again, this time for attempting to oust Jeffrey Berman. That eventually fell to the president to do, since Berman resisted Barr's initial attempts. Of course, Berman is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He was investigating the president and some of the president's allies. We knew for a long time that this administration was not thrilled about any of this. Of course, what more do we know about the timing of why Barr did this when he did? And, is the administration worried about the optics? Because on the surface, it doesn't look good.
Certainly the optics don't look good, and it's notable that this firing came on a Friday night. We've seen this happen repeatedly during this administration. Firings that they don't really want a lot of media attention to be drawn towards happens late on a Friday night, although ultimately it takes up a news cycle. And this firing really raised a lot of eyebrows, not only because of its timing, but of course because of the kind of work that Berman does. He's investigating the president, his administration, allies, people that the president is close to. So that raises, of course, a lot of eyebrows there. But then the pattern of how this all played out over the weekend was really surreal. The president tried to distance himself from it. And we know that there are going to be investigations into this firing and how things played out. The House Judiciary Committee has already said that they plan to hold a hearing and launch an investigation into it. Although Senate Republicans, Trump's allies, say that firing Berman is well within his abilities as president and as executive, head of the executive branch, and that's part of his abilities, and they've defended him for that.
All right. Well, Meridith McGraw, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.